doing? So, we are gonna jump right into day 6. We are about halfway through. A little over halfway, I think. I don't know. I think so. Day 6 is a long one because I think there's some interrogation tapes that we got going on. I know this next coming witness, he's a pretty long one, so we might even jump ahead a little bit on this one, depending on how he keeps my interest. I don't know what he's going to testify for. I just kind of skipped through to see how long he was, and he is the entirety of this hour and 55-minute piece. So, with that being said, hopefully you guys are caught up. You know what's going on. You know what's not going on. And we shall get through it and get started. All right. Oh, by the way, how's everybody doing? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever we are in our day. Hope everybody has had a fantabulous day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever. If you're not, hopefully this makes you feel better. Hopefully it boosts your spirits, or at least gets you thinking about some things, or, takes your mind off some things and, go from there. I don't know. Anywho, let's just get right in here and see what's going on. And this one has subtitles, which is good because his English is not
Would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
And I might be popping in and out to do some laundry here and there. So, just FYI. It's Sunday today, so
Good morning.
this is life.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Warner Doctor,
Good morning, Mr. Monte.
if you would, please go ahead, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, first, how to spell your name. Secondly, where you work and what you do.
My name is Hirotaka Nakasone, Hirotaka. Last name is Nakasone. Currently, I'm assigned to the Operational Technology Division of the FBI, Quantico, and he performs a variety of duties as a senior scientist. I conduct research and development activities for the development of automated speaker recognition systems, and also as a collateral duties, I perform on routine basis voice-related forensic examinations, including speaker recognition, speech analysis, and acoustic analysis of signals we encounter, including gunshot analysis. And lastly, also as a senior scientist, I provide advice, guidance, recommendations for the operational technology divisions and other FBI field office.
Dr. Nakasone, how long have you been in your current position?
Since 2009, as a senior scientist for 4 years, and prior to that, I was also hired in a similar, position since 1996.
Tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury essentially what it is that you have done, how long you've been in this field, and what has made you sort of qualified to hold your current position.
Well, initially, when I was doing my PhD, thesis at Michigan State University, I got into this forensic speaker recognition as part of my thesis under Professor Oscar Toshi. And when I graduated with the PhD degree, I taught at Michigan State as an assistant professor for 18 months or so. And after that, I moved to Los Angeles County Sheriff Department in Los Angeles, California, to take up a federal research project for the development of computer-assisted voice identification system. I stayed at Los Angeles County Sheriff Department for 7 years, since 1985 to 1992. And my title with the Sheriff Department was
His career
voice
has been longer than your
specialist.
life.
And then consequently, I joined FBI in
This was
August
10
of
years ago. This man
1992
is
for
retired
the
now.
same
Guarantee it.
responsibilities,
Living
type
his
of the
best
work
life.
I did.
I barely started mine.
And I think I was qualified by the FBI to conduct forensic examinations on the audio evidence in 1994. And ever since, I've been doing this kind of work until today.
Doctor, have you mentioned a PhD thesis. Have you done research in this field independently of just your work?
Yes, my first independent scientific work would be my own PhD thesis. Thesis was titled as a automatic speaker recognition. After that, I initiated a lot of research projects to the members identified there are a number of methods used. The first one is known as a automated or computer-based speaker recognition, and phonetic-based voice comparison, spectrograph voice comparison, and then oral or by listening comparison method. But there is only underlining routine, which is the listening methods. The computer algorithms, that's a mathematical or statistical approach, is highly complicated, highly advanced, it's fairly accurate, but this kind of technology still must be supervised by properly trained examiners.
Let me start with the idea of what kind of sample you need or a person in your position needs in your lab to sort of be able to even conduct an analysis. What is it you're looking for?
As part of the standard operating procedures, what we do at the laboratory first, before we do any analysis, would be to evaluate the suitability of the data. And we check and listen very carefully. And then want to make sure speech sample we have at hand are naturally spoken. It will be devoid of disguise attempt, any evidence of intoxication or effects of alcohol. They must be removed for the analysis. And also we pay attention to the emotional state of the speech. If the person is uttering voice samples with the extreme, happiness, the voice will be too joyous, including a lot of giggling and laughter. Those must be removed from analysis. Sometimes we run into voice being uttered when the person is going through stress or undue depression. This voice must be also removed. And any other unnatural voicing, say like yelling, screaming, or mourning, this type of voices must be removed for the analysis under the standard operating procedures. And when the speech is determined to be natural, then we will check the other aspects of the conditions. For example, the duration must be at least 30 seconds. after, blank or silence removed. Usually, we can do a meaningful analysis if the voice sample is 30 seconds, 1 minute, maybe up to 3 minutes or so. After 3 minutes, the performance sort of hits the ceiling. But when the speech sample, say, drops down to only 10 seconds, 14 seconds or so, the examiner has to conclude that the voice, quality is not, what duration is not really good enough for us to analysis. And then we will also check the amount of reverberation included in the speech. If there is a long time reverberation in the recording, we remove. We do not proceed to the examination. Another thing is that suppose we have two voices to compare. One coming from recorded, incriminating recording, and the other voice is coming from suspect voice recorded in the
and the microphone that could have an effect.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. The effects of the distance to the voice is also regarded as a something we have to be careful. There are two terms to describe those. The first one is a far field recording versus near field recording. When we typically talk on the phone, our lips are very close to the microphone, maybe an inch away. That's a typical near field recording. It captures our voice very clearly. On the other hand, when the person is, say, far end of the room, and there are, say 10 feet, 15 feet away, we call this voice, when captured by a recording system, we call it, far field recording or far field voice. And far field voice has problems because not only the weakened signal, it has a noise convolved with it, mixed with the noise created by the room, and also reverberations and echoes created by multiple bouncing walls that sort of smears the voice. And another thing is that far field voice tends to have very poor signal to noise ratio. Signal to noise ratio is the ratio of signal divided by noise plus signal. Say like in this courtroom, the signal level, when we measure it by sound pressure meter, it might give something like 40 dB decibels. And I'm talking probably with the total of about 80 dB loudness, and the signal to noise ratio is sort of, it's a logarithmic expression, but when we do a calculation in dB, we just use subtraction. So 80 minus 40 gives me the voice. My voice will carry about 40 dB signal to noise ratio, and that's what you hear. And 40, 20 is 100. It's more than 1,000 times.
We're just gonna keep going because he's making me sleepy.
Yelling or screaming. Let me call it screaming. Screaming goes in and out when the dispatcher and the female caller were talking, and sometimes the screaming comes up isolated from those. But since we cannot really analyze any voice which is stepped over by something else or superimposed with other people's voice, I discounted those earlier and came up with somewhere a little less than 3 seconds. 2.53 seconds of screaming was sort of standing by itself.
Let me make sure I've got this clear, Doctor. There were, as you referenced, in that 45-second portion, there was a series of that, what you've described as a screaming noise. How long total, both what you call stepped on and unstepped on?
Total, if I combine all of those segments, it reached a little less than 19 seconds. 18.80 seconds or so. And of those, 16 some seconds were completely overlapped by other voices, and less than a little 3 second, 2.5, 3 second was the only area where nothing else but screaming was coming through.
And what were you able to do with that amount of sample and that type of sample?
We checked, and I have to render my final conclusion. That type of voice sample or utterance is not fit for the purpose of voice comparison, and this is a mistake. And this kind of judgment is based upon the research and also common sense type of understanding among scientific communities.
So you concluded based upon finding out what you told us about 18 and 16 in about 3 seconds and the type of recording that you couldn't make a comparison. Am I understanding that right?
That is correct.
Is there something about the nature of the sounds itself, independent of the shortness of the sample or the other complications that you've already discussed, that also made it harder for you to be able to even conduct a comparison in this case?
In this case, signal to noise ratio of that particular screaming was very poor, and that was due to the distance between the telephone set in the premise that female caller was using and presumed location where altercation was taking place. But of course, we didn't have any visual information of those geometric information, but by listening, we could tell that was far field recording. And there was another slight reverberation was also contained in that screaming.
Doctor, independent of whether you can compare a sample like this to a known sample of someone's voice, which you said you could not in this case, are you able to, what sorts of things are you sometimes able to tell about determining the age of a person who's giving a sample?
It is common belief among scientific communities attempt to guess the age of the person from a recorded voice is rather complicated, and often we can tell, we can approximate, but very often we know people make mistakes. When we hear on the phone someone's voice, say a young man's voice coming through, and I may think, oh, this guy's very young, 20 years old probably, but it can turn out to be 55-year-old talking. Or sometimes I listen and then judge. I think everybody may have gone through this before too in your life. You may think that this man is very old, maybe 30, 35, but he can turn out to be only 18 or 19. And this also depends upon the individual too. It's so guessing age is a little complicated.
Tell me what you know about, for example, just the generalized parameters of the pitch of a voice, what that means as it relates to ages, genders, and stages of development.
The pitch is, well, let me just define quickly. Pitch is the psychological perception of actual vibrations or vocal cord. Say like when I'm talking in this courtroom right now, probably my vocal cord is opening and closing approximately 100 times per second. So 100 repetitions of the same thing per second is called 100 hertz. And maybe 120. The average front pitch of the grown or adult male is somewhere around 120 hertz. Now, on the other hand, the average adult female voice has about 220 hertz per second. It's twice as high as men. Now, on the other hand, a small child produce somewhere around 400 hertz on the average. Small children has the highest pitch. Now, these are of course based upon the speech samples while everybody is talking in the normal speech, carrying out conversation. This pitch goes all over the place when someone in extreme conditions, say like roller coaster ride or a pilot's voice right before the crash to the ground, or somebody who goes through extreme emotional status. The pitch is known to raise way higher into 500, 600, 700 hertz, regardless of the age. And normally, we are accustomed to hear a person's pitch, but there's another phenomena along with it. When we speak, pitch is the baseline. Pitch is sort of a source of energy, but the reason why we hear distinctive sounds from me is not because of the pitch. It's created by resonance patterns created by the tube formed inside human vocal tract. The tube starts from the lips all the way down to the top of the vocal cord. It's somewhere around 15 to 17 centimeters or so. This tube is constantly changing and it creates resonance. And that resonance can be also changed when the person uttering something under extreme emotional state.
Doctor, have you yourself made attempts and actually taken exemplars and been able to estimate the age, or at least the general age of a speaker with prior samples?
It occurred to me, but I decided it was not possible to determine.
On this one?
On this particular case.
But you've done that before?
Yes, I have analyzed the variety of voices in the past.
And sometimes you're able, and did I understand, sometimes you're not?
That is true. I have analyzed voice coming from 16-year-old young man against the 20-year-old man. I don't quote the case, but we were able to identify the voice. And in other cases, more often than not, we not recommend to police department or FBI field office, do not try to get voice samples from a young boy who are going through potential voice change. And this puts some sort of very special, unique situations, because depending upon individuals, one person goes through and complete his voice change in a rather short period of time. He may start at 12. He may complete his voice change within a year. But some individual may go through extended period of time before his voice finally gets established.
And that could take as late as how in life?
I can't really quote exact year, but usually voice gets established at age 20, plus minus a couple years.
Okay. So up until that time, in your experience, most people are undergoing that sort of change.
That is correct.
Did I understand you to say, too, that one of the complicating factors in determining age is this concept of residence and what phone recordings and that technology does to your ability to accurately determine all that?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. Did I understand you to say earlier that one of the things that affects the ability to, for example, get a better read on the age of the person making the voice sample is when it's a recorded sample that other of those factors enter into the recording. For example, in this case, you've already talked about the distance, the low sound quality, the low sound level, as well as the compression by the cell phone's microphone itself.
The attempt and then accuracy of estimating someone's age by listening to a recorded voice would be about same as listening to a live voice, without, of course, without looking at the face. There will be no difference between the two.
So you think a person hearing it live would have about the same ability as a person who have heard a recording?
That is correct. If the listener is not really familiar with the voice he's listening to.
And I want to get to that because we've mentioned this already a couple times. You talked that one of the methods that you use yourself is what you call the oral or the listening approach to this, where you tell us a little bit more about what that involves.
Why? Why do I need to know more about this? If this
There
is not
are
fucking
two
helpful?
types of listening identification. The first type is called familiar voice recognition by listening. And the second type is called unfamiliar voice recognition by listening. As I mentioned before, I haven't mentioned that yet. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
But there is a set of requisites for the familiar voice recognition is regarded, reliable and valid. For example, when we listen to anybody's voice in our life, we intentionally or unintentionally encoding the perceptual features of the person's voice. When he is speaking normally, slowly, excited, emotional, all of these are stored in my brain. And then I also must have an ability to retrieve those features when I'm confronted with a task to compare later voice. And then I gotta have the ability to compare a particular feature generated from later voice against features stored in my brain. So in other words, for this particular case, best approach would be familiar voice recognition by the individual who have heard him in his whole life, speaking, uttering in a variety of conditions, including screaming, yelling, under similar setups.
So do I get what you're saying, and is it would be better if you were attempting to a familiar voice, someone who has heard the potential subject here under a variety of conditions, as opposed to simply, say, talking to them back and forth in a courtroom or a meeting or something like that?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. And that would be about the best approach you could take given this particular sample.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Doctor. If I could have a moment, Your Honor.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Cross?
Oh, and it's my favorite guy.
Good morning, Dr. Nakasone.
Good morning, Mr. West.
Nice to see you again. If I could have this marked, please.
Can I help you?
I would like to approach the witness.
If you'll show it to counsel first, please.
Excuse me. This is defendant exhibit FF for identification.
Yes.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, this is my curriculum vitae.
And In addition to the training and experience that you talked about a moment ago, does this contain references to your publications and research and other life experience as a voice expert?
Yes, this lists my professional affiliation. I have about
Is that even
half a dozen
relevant?
of memberships in the technical associations. And also, this lists the award that I received in the
I mean, I guess it's
past,
relevant
including
to show that
FBI
even
Director's Award
this
for the
man couldn't
development
tell
of
the
automated
difference
speaker
between
recognition
who
system.
was talking
And
and who
it also
wasn't,
lists the my current
who was
effort
yelling and who
in
wasn't.
establishing a scientific working group for forensic and investigatory
So
voice
the state
speaker
trying to
recognition.
say
And that scientific working group was formed and
Trayvon.
launched and kicked off on
Clearly, she
March
don't know.
19 of this year. And there are somewhere around
Okay, either
30
get
to 40
comfortable or get
members.
down.
Among those, 16 members
Get
from
down.
they are voting members,
Perfectly.
and the remaining would be advisory members. And bulk of those memberships made up of highly reputable scientists, both in forensic and in technical field, mostly coming from either U.S. government, federal, state, and also academia and
Come on.
major industry who produces
have to sit a
speaker
different
recognition
way.
technology.
Let's
And
talk about that for just a moment. That's the working group that you mentioned in your direct examination that you're focusing on now is a group of scientists, speech or voice identification, voice comparison experts that have pulled together to meet regularly in the issue of speech or speaker identification.
that is correct.
How was the group started and what is its primary mission?
The concept of this, scientific working group was born in 2009 when the interagency symposium was held, and we recognized that there are lack of, consensus or integrated or coordinated efforts in establishing a common standard operating procedures. And it took about 3 or 4 years before we can actually form and construct this scientific working group. The missions and the goals of this scientific working group includes the preparation and then the publication of the guidance for the practice of the speaker recognition, and then recommendations for research activities, and also legal advice for the practitioners, and also the harmonization of the variety of speaker recognition methodologies amongst scientists, engineers.
And what is your role on that working group?
I am the elected chairperson of that scientific working
What
group,
does it matter?
and there are 4 subcommittees underneath of my chairmanship. One is known as a research, development, test, and evaluation subcommittee. And another one is the best practice subcommittee. And then the third one is interoperability voice standards implementation subcommittee. It's just called simply Type 11. And then number 4 is the science in the support of law subcommittee.
As a result of your work with this group, does that bring you in contact with some of the most distinguished voice scientists in the world?
Hey. Can you bring me a tape measure? Oh my God, I meant to mute me, not them. That was silly.
The analyzability of the voices while produced in screening. And everybody, most of the scientists believe that there is no validity,
Sorry.
and therefore results of the analysis would be utterly unreliable if anybody analyzed that voice for the purpose of voice identification by utilizing advanced electronic device or computer algorithms.
See?
Your working group,
Reliable.
did you found this group?
I helped coordinate it and succeeded in getting the funding to establish this. Actually, this particular scientific working group
Who is she?
are sponsored by the FBI
I wonder if it's-
and also sponsored by National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Is the acronym for that NIST?
That is correct.
And is that the former National Bureau of Standards?
That is correct.
Thank you. The funding came from your efforts and is participated, the funding also, there's a funding participation with NIST?
Yes, NIST, the function of the NIST for this particular effort would be administration of the, speaker meetings, activities, and remote conferences, and then coordination of the website. And also they provide technical assistance because after all, NIST is the one who has been providing technical evaluation of the speaker recognition technology since 1996 throughout the world. And they are reputable
Fidgety.
in terms of coordinating scientific and blind testing of the performance of technology for voice identification, including not only in the computer domain, but also in utilizing human listening abilities, known as a HASR, H-A-S-R, human-assisted speaker recognition.
Dr. Nakasone, you're talking about NIST's efforts to promote evaluation of these various methodologies that you've touched upon, and so that if somebody has a methodology that could further the speaker recognition industry, they're invited to submit it to NIST as one of their programs evaluation and be recognized by the scientific community. Is that basically what you're saying?
Yes, NIST function, as far as I understand because I have participated since 1998. Every year speaker recognition evaluation by the NIST. The goals or missions of NIST, speaker recognition evaluation is promotion of the science,
What do you would like
and
to
then
cover?
evaluation of
Include
the technology developed by
commentary for me?
participants. However, though, they are not really charged with evaluation of the system as applied in any specific areas. They do technology evaluations, but they really do not do yet, as of today, application-specific evaluations. Maybe it's best if I just come up with the analogy, like automotive.
Quit.
We have engines inside, and that engine could be mounted on any kind of cars,
Okay.
and then perform differently. So NIST sort of evaluates performance efficiency of the engine itself. But they don't really go up to how this engine is mounted in what kind of body style.
It sounds like you are current insofar as what's happening in the scientific community of speaker identification.
I do believe that I am completely familiar with cutting edge in technology and scientific studies.
And if I heard you earlier correctly, there is no methodology or science that can reliably evaluate screams as to speaker identification at this time.
That is correct. The NIST has not addressed the extreme voice samples like that.
Okay.
The working group that you talked about includes, you said academics, you're talking about college professors and researchers
No
that
further
don't necessarily
questions.
run a laboratory.
What else do you need?
Yes, in addition to those,
That would be considered under the broader definition as a forensic application of this science.
that is correct. What they are doing might be using the same technology for investigative purpose by utilizing forensic style. Sometimes forensic style means added rigor of the analysis, and the examiners will be doing analysis and writing report always as if he would be
By forensic, I'll summarize it, or you correct me, or that it's where they focus toward evaluating evidence for possible use in a courtroom setting.
The other narrow definition and a broad definition of the word in forensics, and what you just defined is a narrow definition of the forensics. Usually, a lot of people think that any evidence created by a forensic laboratory should be able to be produced as evidence in the courtroom. However, there is another interpretation, which is the broad definition. Forensic simply means the analysis that is being conducted for the purpose of investigative guidance, criminal investigation or terrorist investigations.
So in other words, if one of those agencies that's only known by its acronym were actively engaged in investigating terrorist activity, it may or may not ever get into a courtroom, but that would be considered under the broader definition as a forensic application of this science.
That is correct. What they are doing might be using the same technology for investigative purpose by utilizing forensic style. Sometimes forensic style means added rigor of the analysis. And the examiners will be doing analysis and writing report always as if he would be, must be substantiated by the evidence, substantiated by the actual analysis. And also, in my area, no single examiner can issue final reports. Usually his decisions, including in this particular case, second examiners have to go through independent analysis and confirm the results. And if there are no confirmation, sometimes, it happens often, the examiner has to move into a conflict resolution. And only after there will be a consensus between the two examiners, report will be finally approved and go out.
Is that what you meant when you said a forensic context has added rigor?
Yes, sir.
And in your laboratory, you have other scientists review the work before a final report is issued?
Yes, that's mandated.
And does sometimes that report, or does that work include a blind panel testing or blind review of the information?
It happens under a situation where when we were asked to say what words were being spoken, and that word turned out to be buried in the noise, very signal to noise ratio. And when we're afraid that listeners, bias can play into the decision, we'll move into this blind test. The primary examiner will lead this, and the primary examiner called one examiner at a time, not without telling him what he ought to be able to hear. And then usually anywhere from half a dozen to 1 dozen of independent examiners will be involved in this type of, a blind test.
And each examiner would listen to the questioned recording or perform his or her own analysis without first being exposed to the opinion of any other analyst?
That is correct. Exposing the other examiners with the preliminary judgment made by the primary examiner would lead to guaranteed bias. So everybody is trained, every examiners in our laboratory are trained not to induce any potential bias.
I take it it's well recognized that there can be that bias, that someone who listens to something at the same time someone else is may be influenced by the impression or the opinion of the person sitting next to them.
There is always danger of biasing others.
And in your setting, you would not tolerate that.
That is correct.
That's not just good laboratory practice, I take it. That would also be good law enforcement practice as they would investigate a case with voice samples.
Objection, Your Honor. It's number one, outside the stated scope, and number two, outside his permitted testimony.
Sustained.
Law enforcement.
Sustained.
Your Honor, could we be heard on that? I think that's an important issue that this
She's not
witness
gonna
is
let
certainly
you.
qualified to talk about.
Well, he's already been qualified as an expert when both sides agreed that he was an expert in voice identification. So please move on.
She does not
May I
like
make
you, sir.
Dr. Nakasone my witness? That was the plan anyway. I'll just call him right this minute as my witness and ask him that question as my witness, not on cross-examination.
He's not here as law enforcement or to testify as to what law enforcement does. So even if you were to do that, there would be an objection. It would be sustained.
Let me explore that then, thank you. Dr. Nakasone, who do you work for?
I work for the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Is that part of the Department of Justice?
That is correct.
And before that, did you work for law enforcement in Los Angeles?
Yes.
Do you participate in training, both for yourself and to train others?
Yes, I do.
are the techniques developed in science and in the laboratory to avoid listener bias. Part of what would disseminate to the field agents so that when they conduct their investigation, they would want to do that consistently with the practice of the laboratory that's ultimately going to be evaluating the evidence.
Our practice at the laboratory is meant to be applied by forensic examiners trained in our own environment. And that is being governed by the Digital Evidence Laboratory, which is accredited by ASCLD, American Society of Crime Lab Directories. And personally, I haven't really guided other law enforcement how to do it, except when I'm being asked by special agents, well, Dr. Nakasone, I have to do, I have to collect a bunch of people and then ask those people, listen to those voices. I would recommend him because he asked, please, avoid any talking among themselves to eliminate any potential bias.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm asked, I provide guidelines.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about the risk of examiner bias, that could carry over into the field if a subject recording that's being played for people.
The rest of the question, and then you can object.
That's being played for people for the purpose of identifying whose voice they are hearing. It creates a high risk of examiner bias if all of the people being asked to identify the voice are played the recording with each other in the same room at the same time, so that each other can see the reactions and comments of each other.
That's not what I would like to recommend.
There's
If
an
I could.
objection.
We are well far afield of even the last attempt to develop this witness's expertise. He said, my training is for forensic examiners, laboratory people. He's not a law enforcement officer, a special agent. He doesn't train them. He occasionally would give advice. Therefore, we're well outside the scope of any expertise that this witness should be testifying about in general terms. If they want to call a law enforcement officer about potential interview bias, that would be the appropriate witness. This isn't. That's my objection.
I mean, have you heard at the bench? I have a constitutional
Yes.
argument to make. Thank you.
Oh, shit. She got in front of the bench. That's crazy. Shouldn't have let me do that. Not. Letting him into the bench. Not at all. She said, no. Come along now. No, no.
Dr. Nakasone, I take it, pride yourself because of the work you do, not just with the FBI, but your active participation in the scientific community in this area at large, to know what's going on around the world in the area of speaker identification.
Yes.
And
Said that already.
you've already said that among the people that you work with, there is a consensus as to certain kinds of voice samples that are suitable for forensic analysis.
That is correct.
So your decision in this case wasn't based solely on your personal view about what samples are reliable or suitable and which ones aren't.
I strongly believe my opinion is supported by my colleagues in the scientific communities.
Let's talk about, first of all, the suitability of the samples you have in this case, which boils down to the screaming, the cries for help on that recording. When you evaluated it, I know from what you said that you took the total amount of the speech and you said that was about 18 seconds, give or take.
That is correct.
Out of the 45-second period from when the screaming started until the apparent gunshot.
That is correct.
So you distilled that to 18 seconds. And then when you removed would it be fair to say the masking noise or overlapped speech, you had considerably less to work with. In fact, it was under 3 seconds.
That's correct. 2.53 seconds.
And
Wasn't even nothing to work with. What is
are you
there to
saying that it was
analyze?
only 2.35 seconds that could in any way be considered suitable? And I don't mean suitable that it was suitable, but that's what you had to start with to make that decision.
Yes, that was cleanest area if we attempt to do any kind of analysis, not for just voice ID, but any kind of analysis.
When you say that you would like 30 seconds or a minute up to 3 minutes of speech for an analysis, are you talking about normal speech or screaming speech?
Normal, natural conversational speech.
And why is that? What's this notion of phonetically balanced speech?
The computer takes statistics of dynamic variation of somewhere around 1,000, a little bit over 1,000 different speech features. And to formulate sufficiently statistically significant models, it takes the speech sample which contains very extensive phonetic contents. Say like in English, thank you very much. In English, there are 44 different sounds. We call them phonemes. And before those 44 phonemes to occur reasonably, it takes a while. One word maybe produce 3 different phonemes. So like when I say, S is one sound, A is another. Last part of the Y sound or E sound will be third phoneme. And say someone says help. You have about 3 different kind of sounds, 3 phonemes, H, L, and the P sound. Now, for the entire phonemes, reasonably, comprehensively, and before it happens, we need reasonable speech durations. And that varies depending upon the vocabulary of the individual use. And by doing empirical studies, we determined that somewhere around 30-second speech samples would carry well-balanced phonetic contents.
Are you saying 30 seconds of what you've characterized as normal speech?
That is called in conversational speech.
Not conversational speech, not someone yelling help over and over for 30 seconds.
If someone continues to yell with the same phonetic content for 30 seconds, we can still count as one word or 3 phonemes. And that's far less than what is being required to do meaningful scientific analysis.
So when you talk about the duration, the 30 seconds, and I think you said maybe sometimes even if it's only 15 seconds, maybe for 16 seconds, maybe you can do a voice analysis. If it gets to be 14 or 10, it's very questionable. You're talking about the duration of normal speech that would contain as many of these phonemes that you're talking about.
That is correct. Let me be a little bit clear about the distinction between 30 seconds and 15 seconds or so. If I continue talking like this for 30 seconds or so, and then record it, and then when we analyze, my 30-second speech sample contains a lot of pauses in between, hesitation pause or a syntactic pause. And those in the pause doesn't carry too much information. And after those were removed, you will be end up with having core of bulk of speech informations, and that would become usually either to 70% or 50% range. So if you have 30 seconds of natural speech, it's fair to predict you're going to have 30 seconds. 15 seconds.
Mhm.
But you have to measure that after you complete this extraction of the silence and pause areas. And if you have, say, 15 seconds, probably examiner would feel comfortable going to analysis. But standard operating procedure mandates, if it's say a 10 second or so, examiner has to call it quit. Because our empirical study indicates the error rate would go up if we utilize too short of speech samples.
So if I hear what you're saying, if you have 30 seconds of normal speech, by the time you get rid of the pauses and hesitations and such, you may have only 15 seconds left that you can then analyze.
That's the typical scenario we get into. Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Is there any amount, well, let me back up first. When you listen to recordings such as the one in this case, are you trying to reach a decision whether the person is under high stress or even in a life-threatening situation?
We assess whether it's normal or deviates from normal range, and examiners are usually have been already exposed to a variety of recording conditions, and he's allowed to make that judgment.
You heard the calls and you heard the screams in this case yourself. You did the work.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And did you consider the person screaming to be in a life-threatening situation?
Yes, it was uttered under extreme emotional state. Facing that situation?
Yes.
Very extreme, emotional state.
Does that make it extremely challenging for you whether there can be any kind of further analysis at all?
Actually, along with our report, we talked to Tampa FBI field agents who submitted this case because he asked. I recommended him not to attempt to record an active screaming voice for this particular case.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow what you said. You recommended that there be another recording or not?
No, I recommended FBI agent that he would not attempt to record an active screaming voice for this particular case.
Let's help the jury follow this a little bit. You told the agent not to attempt to do a reenactment recording for use in this case. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Voice comparison, I take it, well, you haven't said it precisely today, is once you get your unknown sample processed and prepared and ready to analyze, the analysis is by comparing it with a known sample of a person's voice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you don't ever do the analysis just listening to the one on its own, correct?
When we were giving only unknown voice, we are not doing any voice comparison. However, we will be evaluating whether this particular unknown voice has is sufficient information in it for us to do future analysis. If we were given another voice samples, we have to compare with.
So your decision to tell the agent out of the Tampa office, basically don't bother trying to do a reenactment, was because no reenactment under basically such different circumstances could possibly give you an exemplar worthy of a reliable comparison.
We believe it would be extremely difficult to recreate in the same situation. It's not just, the scream voice. It just doesn't have a, raised pitch. Something else is changing too. Scientists believe that potentially there might be some physiological or anatomical structure could be different. When they are, different under, specific conditions, this resonance, mechanism can change too. And since it's not really easy to recreate in the same situation, we don't believe as scientific communities we can recreate these unique situations. It doesn't happen every day. It's difficult.
Screaming in this context is, you're saying, physiologically very, very different than talking, but really loud.
That is correct. It's a completely different type. And the scientists do not know exactly how they are different.
So there's really, if I hear you correctly, there's no amount of screaming speech, whether it's 2.53 seconds or 10 seconds or maybe 30 minutes, that would be suitable for the kind of voice comparison analysis that we are able to do now in the current state of the art.
That is correct.
You also said, I believe, that because, I'll connect the dots here if I heard you correctly, because of the physiological changes that come about when someone screams under very high stress in a life-threatening situation, for example, that it has such a profound impact on the way they sound that you can't in any way reliably say how old the person is that's screaming.
I don't think it would be possible to determine the age by listening to that extreme type of a voice.
So in other words, the screams that you heard on that 911 call could be made by a 27-year-old, a 35-year-old, or even a 50-year-old man under similar circumstances.
Under similar circumstance, it's very, very challenging, and the scientific community may not attempt, not only myself, attempt to guess or estimate age of the person who is screaming.
And you can't do that in this case.
I did not attempt.
And you didn't attempt because based upon what you know from your own work, what you know from being a member of the scientific community, that to do so would be a fool's errand, that you can't come up with a reliable scientific opinion because it's screaming, someone screaming for their life.
Yeah, that's what I said.
In my opinion, that's the
That's his opinion.
consensus among the scientific group or members.
Okay, no more questions.
I think
Can't do it.
with all of that, what you're saying is science really doesn't help us in this case figure out who's screaming.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, that is correct.
So,
The best chance, if
again,
any, in your
what the
mind would
fuck am I
be
doing
based
here?
upon lay witnesses that have familiarity with the voice of either George Zimmerman or Trayvon Martin or both.
That is my opinion. Yes, correct.
Are there still the same challenges because it's very limited speech, because it's under high duress, because it's in the background, and the kinds of things that you've talked about already?
Layperson of familiar voice recognition would be the best, here. But as you mentioned, challenge, and that challenge would be characterized by the fact that this person has a familiarity. The question is, would this person is in possession of the information about specific perceptual features that they can extract from that yelling and screaming to the same features they can retrieve from their memory about their loved ones and voice who were producing the audio information under the same situations.
So the same situation is still an issue. In other words, you're saying if they can connect something they hear in the recording with something that they know is familiar, that's the best chance you're going to get in this case of someone being able to identify the voice.
And
It doesn't
either one of
have to
them
be
could have been
exactly
yelling
same,
help.
but somewhat under
Either
similar
one of them could have been.
conditions. Yes.
Would
Trayvon
you
could have been on
urge
top
caution
yelling
to this
help.
jury as well in that sort of analysis, trying to figure out lay witness testimony that say they can identify the voice because of all the things you've talked about? Would you urge caution in listening to the opinions of the lay witnesses and suggest it really needs to be in the context of the case?
I'm going to object. He's asking him to comment on what the jury should
The judge will give the instructions to the jury at the end of the case when the evidence is complete, and those are the instructions that the jury will follow. Your objection is sustained.
Ask another question.
May I have just one moment, Judge? Thank you.
Thank you. Any redirect?
Please, John. So, Doctor, what I understand you to say by specific perceptual features is the best type of person to make these sorts of judgments on even on a sample like this is someone who's heard the potential speaker under sort of similar circumstances.
That is correct.
So they've heard them upset or in distress before.
Yes.
As far, would you say that they would have that kind of listener would have an advantage over someone who's never heard the person upset or in great distress before?
No. That's fine.
I think the person who has heard same features from both voices would be more reliable than individual who claims he is familiar with certain people, but everything what he heard from this particular person are coming from a normal type of conversation.
Thank you. You referenced talking about standards of desiring 30 seconds or that sort of thing of speech and words. That was as it relates to, and I just want to make sure that we're very clear on this point, all of those standards and things like that, those were as it relates to your desire to conduct a computer-assisted or an algorithm-assisted examination, not the sort of, am I right about that?
That is correct.
Okay. And as far as this idea of, because before I leave that point, I think I heard you say earlier that, for example, if you were talking on the phone with your mom, it might only take you a word or two.
That is correct.
Okay.
Doesn't take too long, a few seconds.
And as I want to go back to this idea of examiner bias and why you as a scientist try to avoid it. As I understand it, in an ideal, you try to make things as a scientist as ideal as possible, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you attempt to control as many variables as you can. Do you think that law enforcement techniques or practices or things of that nature mirror what should go on in a laboratory?
No, we do not have any saying about what they do unless I'm specifically request to give them guidance. But otherwise, usually say like we prefer the voices will be recorded by a high fidelity microphone tape recorder, but most of the voices we receive are recorded by a variety of random recording devices. We take them all.
And just so I'm clear on this concept of what you refer to as the potential bias, again, you were talking in context of having a scientist conduct what you called an unfamiliar voice analysis, the computer assisted or that type of identification where you don't know, have never heard the supposed speaker's voice before, right?
Yes.
Okay.
However, though, that happens also in the voice lineup situation. We recommend to FBI agents when asked.
Objection. Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Doctor.
Exactly. Why would you
Please
talk
avoid your
over?
comments.
Yes, Judge.
Go ahead, Dr.
She doesn't do speaking objections.
I said the
You can't object
effort
right in the
to
middle.
guide them to remove any bias effect happens not only to the technical analysis for unfamiliar voices, but also it is equally important. The same, safeguard against bias would be as important in the familiar voice recognition as well.
Bias.
To
Not
remove
saying it right.
risk of bias
Just
and also to improve the credibility
no.
of the results of this,
No.
identification procedure.
If I heard you about voice lineups, you're talking about a situation where possibly a victim of a crime is asked to come down and listen to potential suspects say what the perpetrator said. Is that what you're talking about, the voice lineup?
Yeah, that would be part of that too. But sometimes it happens. There's not enough, quality in the very lengthy, voice recordings happening in the, federal cases. And I recommend only thing they can do would be to find somebody who are familiar with the voices, and then advise them if they have, say, 3 or 4 potential individuals who presumably familiar with the voice, advise them to have each listen to the recorded voice of the target individual separately, one at a time. That's part of the my recommendation. Okay.
If we're talking about the potential for bias, that is exactly what it is, right? A potential?
Yes.
Okay. If I were to have you and another person familiar with your mother's voice listen to it together, are you worried that that would compromise your ability to recognize someone with whose voice you are so familiar?
Well, there's always a chance.
Okay.
I might get compromised.
When you say there's a chance,
Yes.
certainly doesn't mean it's going to happen, does it?
Objection. Lead it.
Yeah. If two voices at hand we have to compare are so obviously different, or so obviously same, the chance of examiner bias might be lesser than the situation in which two voices sound alike or very difficult to analyze. And I think the examiner's human, they have a
So
tendency
we've
to
determined
sort of follow the
that this
leader.
is very difficult to
And
analyze.
that happens. And the bias
taking
issue
very
is
long.
a very serious, embedded
Yes.
within the scientific working group for speaker recognition as well. It's a very serious issue.
Does bias work both ways? And by that, I mean, if you go into it not wanting or assuming that you're not hearing the same voice,
It can go either way.
It can.
as far as
Very
familiar
good.
voice identification goes, understanding the frailties of this particular tape, understanding that what you've said is the more scientific computer-assisted method doesn't provide us with enough here. Did I understand your testimony?
Yeah, that is correct. Because the computer, there's no way for the computer to contain all sorts of features coming from the voice it's analyzing. It's just a one-shot analysis.
So if you've only got that one shot, the best person to do it is someone who's heard that voice under similar circumstances.
That is correct.
Thank you. No other questions?
Very briefly.
No more. No. Sit down. Sit down.
At the FBI lab, you don't limit your analysis just to the computer, the automated speaker recognition. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our approach is called hybrid approach. It's a method of automated speaker recognition by computer supervised by a trained examiner. And this means the numbers regurgitated by the computer alone cannot be utilized as a source of our report. The examiner will be his examination independently from computers, because human can extract some features that the computers cannot, and vice versa. So always those two components are moving together. It's called automated speaker recognition with human in the loop. That's another term.
You always have a trained examiner listening, in other words.
That is correct.
And your examiners are trained in the various methodologies available for speaker recognition.
That is correct. The computer cannot really assess whether input and voices are produced under influence of alcohol, or computer cannot tell right now whether a person was happy, sad, or voice was produced under abnormal duress. So to detect all of those, we have to depend upon the trained examiners. So these two components must go hand in hand in our practice at FBI.
You mentioned that the spectrographic analysis was a method that was employed more in the past than currently. And the FBI does not currently use that approach. Is that correct?
It was used up to last year. FBI modernized the speaker recognition technology on May 15, 2012. So examiners would not use spectrographic voice comparison anymore for the purpose of voice comparisons. It's been replaced by the advanced modern computer software.
Mm-hmm. Based upon your knowledge that the event in this case occurred on February 26, 2012, is there any methodology that you're familiar with that would include the aural perceptual methodology, the spectrographic analysis, or the automated speaker recognition software approach that the FBI now uses that would be suitable for analyzing the screams that we had in this case?
No.
Thank you, Doctor. That's all I have.
We redirect?
Thank God. No.
We
Sit down.
redirect?
Suitable for for generating a report under your protocol. When you say there's no suitable methodology, is that what you mean?
Yes, there was no technology or scientific device, algorithm, software were suitable to analyze the particular voice we had. But that would not preclude familiar voice recognition by the individuals who are familiar with the voice. Thank you.
Thank you. May Dr. Nakasone be excused?
Yes.
Thank you very much for your excuse.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is this a good time for a recess, break? Okay, we'll be in recess for 15 minutes.
The case tray one.
Both sides, and obviously, in terms of legal requirements for excise, how to redact it out.
And it is the redacted copies that are going to be introduced
That is
into
correct,
evidence?
Your Honor. That is the only part that will be introduced in evidence. Some of them are audio and some of them are video. No, that's correct. There are transcripts, but they're not being introduced because you can understand what's being said.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to bring the jury in?
We are, Your Honor.
Okay, come on, we'll bring them in.
Jurors present, Your Honor.
Please be seated. The state will please call your next witness.
Can we call Morris Singleton?
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
You state your name for the record, please.
Doris Singleton, Singleton.
What is your occupation, ma'am?
I'm a police officer of the Sanford Police Department.
And are you assigned to a particular unit?
I'm assigned to the Neighborhood Response Unit.
How long have you been with the Sanford Police Department?
December will be 9 years.
And what have been your previous assignments prior to the one you're in right now?
I've also been on road patrol. I've been a school resource officer. I've been an investigator with the narcotics unit.
How long were you an investigator with the narcotics unit?
About 3 to 4 years,
And how long have you been in your current position?
since February.
Prior to that, were you with the narcotics unit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And prior to being with the Sanford Police Department, did you have any law enforcement experience?
Out of college many years ago, I was a parole officer for 2 years in the state.
Can you briefly tell us about your education background, ma'am?
I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Florida in criminal justice with a minor in legal studies. I also went to the probation officer academy. After college, that was in 92, and I've been to the police academy. And then we have
Okay.
training as we go along within the police department.
All right. I want to draw your attention back to February of last year. That is 2012. What was your assignment at that time?
I was assigned to the narcotics unit as an investigator.
Fantastic.
I want to draw your attention to Sunday evening, February 26th of 2012.
Say
Were you
hi.
on duty or off
goodbye.
duty that evening?
I was off duty.
Nice. Stop.
Did you get a call to assist an investigator regarding a shooting that occurred at the
Thank
retreat at
you.
Twin Lakes?
Yes, I received a call from Sergeant Santiago.
And how was it that you were off duty? You got called to assist him, I guess? Did there need to be an additional investigator, or how did that come about?
Well, the sergeants within the investigative unit have an on-call status, and they take turns. So that particular week, Sergeant Santiago, who is my supervisor for the narcotics unit, was the on-call sergeant for any investigative call-outs. And so he called me to
And were
assist.
you assigned to assist investigator Chris Serino?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was he the lead investigator?
Chris Reno is the lead investigator, yes.
When you were called that evening, did you actually go to the crime scene itself, that is to retreat at Twin Lakes, or did you go elsewhere?
I did not ever go out to the crime scene that night. I went straight to the police department.
And were you requested by somebody to go to the Sanford Police Department?
Yes, sir. I believe it was Sergeant Santiago that asked me to go there.
And for the purpose of doing what at the police department?
I wasn't told, I believe, until I got there.
So you were directed specifically not to go to the scene, but to go to the actual police department?
Yes, I believe at that time I was already told that Zimmerman was already en route to the police department. Of course, I didn't know his name at the time.
When you arrived at the Sanford Police Department, was George Zimmerman already present there?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, do you see George Zimmerman in the courtroom today?
Yes.
And
Yes, I
is
do. He's
that the
standing.
person that just stood up,
Yes, sir.
trying to directly reflect the witness, identify the defendant?
Record will so reflect.
When you came into contact with defendant George Zimmerman, was he in an interview room there?
Yes, sir. George Zimmerman was in an interview room.
And were there any officers present there?
Not in the same room, but in a room where they could observe him. This particular interview room is got a two-way mirrored glass where you can see into the room, but he wouldn't have been able to see out of the room. And Officer Adam Johnson and Officer Timmy Smith were there on the other side of the glass watching him.
Yes, ma'am. You briefly described the interview room. How big would you say it is about?
I would say it's maybe 8 feet by 5 feet. I'm not really good at measurement, so,
Okay.
so.
And is there a table and chairs in the interview room?
Yes, a table probably similar to the size of the table I'm sitting at now.
Did you end up talking to the defendant George Zimmerman?
Yes, I did talk to him that night.
And was your interview with the defendant George Zimmerman recorded in any way, ma'am?
Yes, it was.
And can you briefly tell us how it was recorded?
It was recorded on just a voice recorder that they give us.
Okay. Does that room have the capability of video recording?
It does,
And can you tell us why it was not videotaped?
because I didn't know how to activate that system.
Oh, well, there.
Now, even though by law, an officer is not required to inform a person being interviewed that they're recording the interview, did you in fact inform the defendant that you were recording that interview?
I did inform him of that, and I placed also the recorder where he could see that it was being recorded as well.
Did you advise the defendant
was
George
okay with
Zimmerman
it.
of his constitutional rights or what's referred to Miranda rights?
I did.
And did you use a form in doing that?
Yes, I did.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you what's been introduced into evidence, State's Exhibit 174. I believe there's no objection. If I may approach the witness, Your Honor. I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 174. Do you recognize said exhibit?
I do.
What do you recognize State's Exhibit 174 to be, ma'am?
This is the Miranda warning card that I read from that night, and that,
Constitutional rights or Miranda rights recorded as part of the recording that you took of the interview of the defendant.
yes, the reading of the rights as well as you can hear me having him sign it.
Okay. Did you ask the defendant whether he understood his rights, ma'am?
Yes, I did.
And did he indicate whether he did or not?
He said that he understood.
And did he agree to waive his rights and talk to you?
He did.
Did you ask him questions as part of the interview, and did he respond to your questions?
Yes.
Okay. At any time during the investigation, did you threaten the defendant in any way in order to get him to make a statement?
No, I did not.
At any time during the interview, did you promise him anything in order to get him to make a statement?
No, I didn't promise him anything.
In your prior experience as a police officer with Sanford Police Department, have you had occasion to come into contact with people under the influence of alcohol and/or drugs?
Yes, very much.
Did the defendant appear to be under the influence of alcohol and/or drugs to the point where he was incapable of understanding what was going on?
I did not get any indication that he was under any influence of anything.
When he spoke to you, did you have any problems understanding him when he spoke to you?
No, he spoke clearly.
Get into some meat and potatoes.
And did he have any problems understanding you when you asked him questions?
He never said that he misunderstood anything I said to him.
When you came into contact with him, did you notice some injuries on him?
Yes,
Okay. And did you discuss those with him, whether he needed any medical treatment or not?
briefly, yes.
Okay. And did he say he did need medical treatment?
He said that he didn't, from what I recall, when I first walked into the room. Later on in the interview, he said he was not sure.
Okay. And did you discuss that with him in terms of providing him an opportunity if he so desired to get medical treatment?
Yes,
And did he decline that?
yes.
Did he complain of an injury when you were speaking of it, like my head is, just I can't think, I'm in pain, I just can't think? Did he ever express that to you?
No, he never said those things in that way.
So why-
If he had done so, would you have interrupted or stopped the interview and had him checked out in some way?
If he had asked at all for any reason, no matter how he was showing himself, that he wanted to go to the hospital, I would have made that happen.
Ma'am, when you came into contact with him, was that the evening of February 26th of 2012, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And do you recall approximately what time you came into contact with him?
Probably somewhere between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock, but that would be a guess.
Okay. And when you first came into contact with the defendant, you described, did he have some blood on his nose?
He had crusted blood underneath his nose.
Okay. Did he also have some blood on the back of his head?
Yes, that was actively bleeding.
Okay. And did he use some tissues to stop that from bleeding?
Yes, we have a tissue box on the table in the interview rooms, and he was using those tissues.
Your Honor, this time I would formally move into evidence. I apologize. Let me make sure I got State's Exhibit 178, which is the defendant's interview with Miss Singleton, Officer Singleton. It's 178. I believe there's no objection.
Okay,
That's correct.
it'll come into evidence.
There is an instruction the court may address at some
Not
point.
as to this one. Ma'am, you had an opportunity to review the recording that was taken of the defendant, the audio recording. Is that correct?
The interviews with myself, yes.
Okay. The interview itself is you asking Mr. Zimmerman questions. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. During the interview that you conducted of Mr. Zimmerman, you had not been to the scene itself, to the shooting scene. Is that correct?
No, I was not at the scene.
So you were not able to quiz him or to challenge him as to what he said because you were not aware of the facts, I'm assuming.
Yes, I essentially knew nothing going in to speak to him,
What was the purpose in terms of interviewing him then?
to get a statement from him.
Go ahead.
Okay, the date is February 22nd, 2012. It's Investigator Singleton. Sitting in an interview room at the Sanford Police Department with,
Now, just to make sure the record, you stated on that February 22nd. In fact, Mr. Zimmerman corrected you and pointed out that it was actually February 26th. Is that correct?
Yes, I misspoke. It was February 26th.
Okay, thank you.
George Michael Zimmerman in reference to an event that happened out at 2831 Retreat View Circle. I'm going to read your Miranda rights because obviously you're here and you are free to go right now because we got to figure out what's going on. You haven't been charged with a crime yet, but you are here and you can't go until we figure out what really happened. And so I'm going to ask to talk to you about it. I got to give you a Miranda warning so that you understand. Okay? Okay, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have to talk to me. Okay? Anything you say can't be used against you in court. I mean, if you say something that proves your guilt, we can use it to prove your guilt. Okay, you understand that? Okay. You have the right to have an attorney present now or any time during questioning. You understand that? Yes. Okay. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you without any cost. Okay. If you talk to me, you have the right to stop answering questions or speak to an attorney at any time. Okay. Do you understand these rights? Yes. Okay. And do you want to talk to me? Yes. Okay. What I need you to do here is put your signature and just date it. Yes. Okay. And this is being recorded. 2/21. Today is the 26th. I'm gonna sign right here. I witness you sign this card.
Well, I don't know what the hell just happened. Don't know. You don't know. I don't know. Okay, well, we're gonna keep going. Of course, you know what would take a shit right in the middle of something actually maybe a little exciting. But, you know. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going.
You to tell me
When you say you haven't been out there, what were you referring to?
To the crime scene.
Thank you.
before this incident, everything you know, why you were there, and all this stuff. First of all, do you live at this address here? No. Okay, so this address in your license that says 1874 Valleywood Way in Lake Mary, you no longer live there?
Correct.
Okay. Do you live in the complex or neighborhood where this occurred?
Yes.
Okay, what's your address?
1950.
This is the correct one? So you live at 1950 Tribune Circle. I'm just gonna keep quiet, and you tell me the story. You tell me what happened tonight, okay?
Just tonight.
Yeah, or whatever led up to this. Anything you want to tell me about what happened, why it ended up, what it ended up to where this boy got shot. Okay.
The neighborhood has had a lot of crimes. My wife saw our neighbors get broken into, and she got scared.
Are you talking about the residents or vehicles?
The residents,
Okay.
while it was occupied. So I decided to start a neighborhood watch program in my neighborhood.
Okay, what is the name of the neighborhood?
Retreat at Twin Lakes.
Is it the little two-story condos or
The townhouses.
townhouses? Okay. Retreat
Retreat at Twin Lakes.
at Twin Lakes. Okay. Okay, you started a
Neighborhood watch.
neighborhood watch. Okay.
Wendy Doorbell, Sergeant Hertz, Officer Buchanan, and I'm the coordinator. And there's been a few times where I've seen a suspicious person in the neighborhood. We call the police, the non-emergency line, and these guys always get away.
What made them suspicious?
This gentleman in particular, I'd never seen him in the neighborhood, know all the residents.
Mm-hmm.
It was raining out, and he was leisurely walking, taking his time, looking at all the houses.
Okay.
When I drove by, he stopped and looked at me.
Had you seen him before?
No.
Never? Okay.
I know all
Remember,
the
he didn't live
kids
there.
in my neighborhood, all the adults in my neighborhood. And like I said, it was raining, and he was just walking casually, not like he was trying to get out of the rain.
Tell us what happened right there.
Sergeant Santiago was still at the crime scene, and he had chirped my Nextel phone. And he wanted me to find out from George if there was, he wanted to find out from George Zimmerman and wanted me to ask him if there was any phone numbers or contact persons that he could locate or give information on to see if there was video surveillance of the gate as to which cars come through the gate.
He wanted to ask the suspect.
Yes.
Don't you think there is somebody else you should ask? Maybe do and maybe like
Is that Sergeant
ask
Santiago
for a
asking you something?
manager?
That's why it's not clearly coming out on the recording.
Right, because it's coming into my phone and I have the phone to my ear.
And he's asking you if there's a tape or video at the gate as far as viewing the cars coming in and out?
Yes, he wants me to find out from George Zimmerman if he knows that information.
Okay.
You know if there's any tape or recordings of vehicles that come in and out of that neighborhood?
The last time they were down, the cameras
It has the ability, but you don't know if it's running.
correct.
He says they do have video, but he doesn't
So
know if it's
he
working
knows
right
that.
now because last he knew it wasn't
So-
working.
he knew they were down before that.
Do you know who the contact is for that video?
Leland Management in Orlando. And his name is Kent Taylor.
Okay. What are we talking about there in terms of contact? Somebody that be able to, well, tell me what you mean by that.
My question to George was if he knew somebody who could get that information that Santiago was asking for. Sergeant Santiago wanted to know who could he contact in order to find out how to get the surveillance from a camera if it existed.
So you're asking the defendant in terms of the contact person, so Santiago can contact that person.
Right, I guess he would assume that George would know, being part of the neighborhood watch, and he would know who to contact for that type of surveillance video.
Thank you.
Kent Taylor.
I don't do my cell phone.
What is Mr. Zimmerman doing now?
So they
Actually looking
wanted
through
his
cell
help.
phone, defendant?
Yes, if at some point I go out of the room and I come back in and I give him the phone so that he can look up the phone number that Sergeant Santiago is requesting.
Okay. Meaning the defendant's phone, Mr. Zimmerman's phone.
Yes, his cell phone.
Mr. Simmons.
Leland Management. So for Leland Management in Orlando, the contact person is Kent Taylor, but he doesn't have the phone number on him.
When Sergeant Santiago asked you to find out the 43, what do you mean by that?
Get the information. 43 is just a 10 code for information. But I haven't gone out of the room yet,
Okay.
based on what I just heard.
something else. How do you do this? Do you know where your cell phone is right now?
They took it from me.
These officers? Okay. I'll be right back.
So far, he's being fully cooperative, giving them everything they need, and they're gonna fuck him over in the end and be like, no, we are gonna prosecute you,
Would you mind getting his phone number?
No,
Up here for me, please?
charge you with murder.
Now, at this point, are you asking the defendant to find or look in his phone and get the phone number that he just talked about?
Yes, I went and retrieved the phone, brought it back to the room, handed it to him, and asked him if he wouldn't mind looking up the phone number that was being requested.
Four 781-1181. The HOA president might also know.
Okay, what's his name?
Don, D-O-N, is 407-790-0054. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
What's going on now? Are you relaying that information to Sergeant Santiago?
Yes, I believe I walked out of the room and relayed that information to him through my Nextel outside of the room.
So even though you walked out of the room, the recording was still going on?
Yes, the recorder
Clearly.
remained inside the room.
Clearly, my G.
You started a neighborhood watch group?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And
I had called before the police had come out, but these guys know the neighborhood very well. They cut in between buildings and.
you're saying these guys, who are these guys?
The people committing the burglaries.
So you've seen more than one person, like, looking suspicious and doing these burglaries?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But you never had seen this guy prior to tonight, or?
I don't recall. I've called a few times. I think you guys probably have the records. I've probably called a half a dozen times.
Okay.
And this time I was leaving to go to the grocery store, and like I said, I saw him walking in the neighborhood, saying in front of the same house that I had called the police before to come to, because this guy leaves his doors unlocked and stuff. And he was walking leisurely and looking at the houses, and so I just pulled my car to the side and I called the non-emergency line.
Were you armed at this point?
Yes,
You were already armed, okay.
I called the non-emergency line and I just reported that there was a suspicious person in the neighborhood. The dispatcher or whoever answered the phone asked me where they went, and I said I wasn't sure because I lost visual of him when he went in between the houses. And he said, well, can you tell me what direction he went? And I said, not really. And then all of a sudden I see him circling my car. And then he goes back into the darkness. So
you pull out of your house and you're heading down the road as you're looking at him.
yes, ma'am.
You're on the phone and he dips between two houses, is that what you mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you lose that.
Correct. And then he comes back out and circles my car while I'm on the phone with the police.
Okay, is he saying anything to you?
I couldn't hear. My windows were up.
Okay.
As soon as I saw him coming up, I rolled up my windows and I stayed on the phone with this man.
Your car was running,
Yes.
the lights were on,
Yes, ma'am.
because he knew somebody was in this car?
Yes, ma'am.
And is he walking completely around the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And the dispatcher asked me where he went. I didn't know the name of the street that I was on.
So you'd come off your street and go into another street?
Yes,
At some point, okay.
Goes in, cuts through the middle of the neighborhood.
Okay.
I didn't know the name of the street, or where he went. So I got out of my car to look for the street sign and to see if I could see where he cut through so that I could tell.
So after you circled your car, he disappeared again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Then dispatcher told me, where are you? And I said, I'm trying to find out where he went. And he said, we don't need you to do that. And I said, okay. He said, we already have a police officer en route. And I said, oh, all right. And I had gone through the dog walk where I normally walk my dog, and walked back through to my street, the street that loops around. And he said, we already have a police officer on the way. So I said, okay. They said, would you like a police officer to meet you? And I said, yes. And I told them where my car was and the make and the model. So I was walking back through to where my car was, and he jumped out from the bushes and he said, what the fuck's your problem, homie? And I got my cell phone out to call 911 this time. And I said, hey man, I don't have a problem. And he goes, no, now you have a problem. And he punched me in the nose. At that point, I fell down. I tried to defend myself. He just started punching me in the face, and I started screaming for help. I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe. Then he started taking my
Are you
head.
still standing at this point?
No, ma'am, I fell to the ground.
Okay.
And then I started yelling help. When I started yelling for help, he grabbed my head and he started hitting my head into the, I tried to sit up and yell for help. And then he grabbed my head and started hitting it into the sidewalk. When he started doing that, I slid into the grass to try and get out from under him, and so that he would stop hitting my head into the sidewalk. And I'm still yelling for help. And I could see people looking, and some guy yells out, I'm calling 911. And I said, help me, he's killing me. And he puts his hand on my nose and on my mouth. And he says, you're going to die tonight. And I don't remember much after that. I just remember I couldn't breathe. And then he still kept trying to hit my head against the pavement, or I don't know if there was a sign or what it was. So when I slid, my jacket and my shirt came up. And when he said, you're going to die tonight, I felt his hand go down on my side. And I thought he was going for my firearm. So I grabbed it immediately. And as he banged my head again, I just pulled out my firearm and shot him.
Okay. And then what happened? You're both on the ground?
I'm on my back. He's on top of me.
Okay.
He's mounted on top of me. And I just shot him. And then he falls off and he's like, all right, you got it. You got it.
Does he fall to the side and he stays laying on the ground, or just?
I don't remember. My vision was blurry. And
You didn't feel him fall towards you? He somehow ended up to one side or the other, or you don't know?
I don't remember. I think when I shot him, it might have pushed him back. But I remember I didn't know what he was hitting. It felt like he was hitting me with bricks. So I remember once I shot him, I holstered my firearm and I got on top of him and I held his hands on because he was still talking. And I said, stay down, don't move. And then somebody comes out, and I couldn't see, there was a flashlight in my head, so I asked if it was a police officer. And he said, no, it was a witness, but he was calling the police. And I said, the police are on the way, they should be here already, because I had called.
Okay.
And he's like, I'm calling the police. And I said, I don't need you to call the police, I need you to help me with this guy. And then an officer shows up. And again, he had the flashlight, so I couldn't see him. And he asked me, who shot this guy? And I said, I did. And I immediately put my hands on top of my head, and I told the police officer where my firearm was. And then he handcuffed me and took my firearm.
Okay, after you shot him, he said, you got me?
Yeah.
Okay. And then when you got on top of him, did he say anything else?
He said, ow, ow.
Yes, okay. You said you had walked back there to try to find out where he went. You were already on the phone with dispatch at that point, because you said you called him from your car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the whole time you were on the phone with
Yes.
dispatch? Were you still on the phone with him when he jumped out?
No.
You had hung up?
Yes.
Did someone else call before the shot? He said he was already calling, right? While he was hitting you, you said you heard someone say, I'm calling?
Yes.
I'm calling, okay. So someone else might have been on the phone
Yes, ma'am.
with dispatch while you were being beat up.
Yes, ma'am.
And you had never seen this guy before?
I don't recall. It's always dark. They always come around nighttime. And
What did he look like?
African American, early 20s, late teens. He was taller than me, so I'd say 6. Footish, slender board jeans.
It was all dark colored stuff?
No, the hoodie was gray and the sweatpants were like, maybe like a denim color, a stonewash denim.
What was his hairstyle? Did he have
He had to put 'em-
dreads, or so you couldn't see?
No,
Right. How's your head?
I can't feel it.
Okay, and who told you, you said when I came in here, they said, someone told you you broke your nose? They told you
Yes.
that? Told you that? Okay, did you need to go to the hospital?
I don't know. They said I didn't, but I don't know.
Is this bump, I can't tell what's normal for you. Can you see,
I can't.
like right here, does this, right here, does that look like a contusion there of some sort, or is that the normal shape of your
No,
head?
it's not normal.
Okay, because it looks swollen there. Can you see the other side? Yeah, I like it.
Are you examining the sides of his head at that time?
I've stood up and come to his side of the table so I can see all sides of his head.
Okay, the person who said, I'm calling for you, did you recognize that person? Okay, so you don't know if that was a resident or?
They were looking out of their back patio. But
Okay, so it was somebody that was looking from a residence saying that they were calling? Okay, did you see more than just that person or?
No.
Okay, so that person said, I'm calling.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, nobody came over to assist in pulling them off. And you were between two houses when this happened?
Behind the houses.
You were behind the houses?
It's a row of houses.
Okay, so it was a row of houses, and you had gone back behind, and then you were on your way back
Yes, ma'am.
out. Okay. Was it one of the houses along the wall? I don't know.
No. Would you like me to draw it?
Yeah, sure.
The neighborhood is kind of like a square like this, and then there's a row of houses here. This is the wall, and there's houses here, and then there's another row of houses here, and this is houses. I parked my car here, the mailbox is here. He went through this dog walk here, and you can either go down the sidewalk here between this row of houses, or you can go straight through to this street. So this is asphalt, I'm sorry, man. This is asphalt, and so I walked straight through to see if there was a street sign that I could tell dispatch where I lost sight of him at. And when I walked back, that's when he came out of the darkness, and I guess he was upset that I called the police.
So this is behind the house that he comes out of the darkness?
Yes,
Behind the building? Okay, and you said there's some bushes or something that
Yes,
you came out of? Okay.
because when I walked past, I didn't see him down here. So I walked through to make sure, I looked to make sure he wasn't there.
Right.
And then I walked straight through to see a street sign. And then when I came back, obviously he was waiting somewhere.
And where is your cell phone? Where was your cell phone? Had you already had it back in your pocket at that point, or did it get dropped, or what happened with your cell phone?
I had it in my hand. When I put it, and they said, would you like the police officer to meet you? And I said, yes, my car's there.
And that's when they disconnected with you?
Yes, ma'am.
That's when they said, okay, they're on,
Yes, ma'am. So I did. I put my cell phone away.
Okay.
And then when I walked back towards him, I saw him coming at me, and I went to grab my phone. I don't remember if I had time to pull it out or not.
Okay, you attempted to try to recall that?
To call the police.
Call the police, right.
911 this time, because the first time I called 911.
But you're not sure if you actually got it out of your pocket or not? Okay. And that's when he slugged you?
He just hit me, yeah.
And what did he say before that? He said, he asked you like something about, you got a
He's like,
problem?
you got a problem with me? And I said, I don't have a problem. And he said, now you have a problem.
Okay.
And that's when he hit me.
And he struck you in the nose first?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what knocked you down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And this is
At that time?
I've stood up and come to his side of the table so I can see.
My head, and he started hitting my head into the, I tried,
completely around the car?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And dispatch asked me where he went. I didn't know the name of the street that I was on.
So you'd come off your street and go into another street?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That goes in, cuts through the middle of my neighborhood.
Okay.
I didn't know the name of the street, or where he went. So I got out of my car to look for the street sign and to see if I could see where he cut through so that I could tell the
So after you circled your car, he disappeared?
police officer went away. So I said, okay. They said, would you like a police officer to meet you? And I said, yes. And I told them where my car was and making the model. So I was walking back
Lady, close your mouth.
to where my car was, and he jumped out from the bushes and he said, what the fuck's your problem, homie? And I got my cell phone out
What's the fuck your
to call
problem?
911 this time. And I said, hey man, I don't have a
Walk is disconnected?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so he's hitting your head now.
Yes, ma'am. As I went to sit up, then he grabbed me by the,
And that's when he slugged you?
he just hit me. Yeah.
And what did he say before that? You said he asked you like something about, you got
He
a
said,
problem?
you got a problem with me? And I said, I don't have a problem. And he said, now you have a problem.
Okay.
And that's when he hit me.
And he struck you in the nose first?
Yes, ma'am.
And that's what knocked you down?
Familiar.
And you're saying this is behind the building, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Relatively
Is
this way.
it a patio? Did he say? Because you said he's hitting your head on a
No,
sidewalk.
it's the sidewalk.
Okay, there's a sidewalk behind?
Yes, ma'am. It's a dog walk.
Okay.
And this is a row of houses, and this is a row of houses, and this is the dog walk.
Okay.
So I walk back here. He
So the
hit me.
dog walk is disconnected?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, makes sense. Okay, so he's hitting your head now.
Yes, ma'am. As I went to sit up, then he grabbed me by the front of my head and started banging into
And
the,
that's when you can look either to your left or right and you can see this guy? And you're saying, help me?
I don't remember, I screamed, help me, probably 50 times as loud as I could.
Okay. But at some point you could visually see that there was someone
Yes, ma'am.
saying something to you
Yes,
from a patio. Do you remember what that person looked like? Okay, and the police got there
Yes, ma'am.
and you were holding him down
Yes, ma'am.
and they asked you,
No, once the police got there, I got on my feet. Because there was another person that got there, I guess a resident. I couldn't see, he had a flashlight, so I thought it was a police officer.
and at that point you still haven't got up?
Yes, ma'am. And then when the police got there, I was already standing up, and I put my hands on top of
So we're talking about
Who had
seconds
told
between
his
the time you
wife
see the
to
flashlight
mind
and
his
they show up, or was it a
business,
little bit?
and he went out.
a while, but I'm sure it was seconds.
And they put you at gunpoint?
I don't know. I had my back, I put my hands on my head and I turned my back to him.
Okay. What were they saying to you, please?
He said, who shot him? And I said, I did.
Okay. That's when you did this?
Yes, ma'am. And I said, I have my gun on my right side in my holster in my waistband. And he said, I know you do. He goes, but I have to handcuff you first. And I said, I just wanted to make sure you know I'm not going for my firearm. And he put my arms down and handcuffed me.
And then where did they take you?
Here.
They just put you right in the police car right away?
No, EMS put peroxide on my head. And I think they put peroxide on my face to get the blood off.
Okay. Is there anything else I haven't asked you or you haven't said that you think is important for me to know? Okay. You said you're in charge of the neighborhood watch group? Okay. And you were just, but you weren't doing it that night, or is it that you were just going to the store each night? Okay. And driving out and you happen to see this kid and you want to check out with him, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Make sure it's okay. Okay. Well, actually, you did the right thing. You called the police.
Yes, ma'am.
Have them check out. You just noticed it. Okay. Is that normally what you guys do when you see something suspicious? You just call?
Yes, ma'am.
You don't try to make contact with them? Okay. All right.
During that interview,
Fucked
there
up.
was an indication, it appeared that he was drawing something. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a pad in there, and he attempted to draw the location where it occurred.
Subsequent to that, actually used a Google map to get him to actually draw on that to demonstrate exactly what happened.
Yes, it wasn't clear to me, and I was confused as to where it actually happened and how the neighborhood was set up. So I went and I got a printout of the Google map of the entire neighborhood and had him show me exactly what he was talking about using the map.
State's Exhibit 1 that we've been looking at.
This is February 26, 2012. Again, I'm in with George Zimmerman in an interview room with the San Police Department. Still have the right to remain on. You've right to attorney and all what I spoke to you earlier about. Would you still continue to talk to me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Just want to ask you a few more questions. This is the neighbor.
And this is when you've gotten a Google map?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us how you got that Google map. Everybody knows about Google, but you actually went on the computer.
I went on the computer and I typed retrieve view circle, I believe is the search. And when it showed it, I printed the page.
And in terms, did you actually use that to actually have him draw what's going on?
Yes, as he would tell me, I would have him make markings on the map itself with a pen to show locations he's referring to.
We're talking about, right? Yes, ma'am. Okay, can you put an X on here where you first saw the guy?
Right about here.
Right about there. Okay, and this is the entrance, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is where you first saw. Okay, and then you're driving. Where were you when you saw him there?
I was driving around here. in this direction.
Here. This is where your car was. Okay. Can you just write car right there? Okay.
Car.
And then you saw him here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then where do you go from there? This is where you start. When do you start calling the police? Where are you?
I pulled in front of the clubhouse.
Okay. Did you pass him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he was here and you passed him and went over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Put it next there. That's where you. Just put 911 because that's where you were when you called 911.
Well, it was the non-emergency.
Okay. Well, that's where you called the police.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then he's behind you. He's still over here, right? Because you pass him.
Right.
Okay. You pass him and this is where he's behind the houses. Okay. And then where do you go when you realize you said he comes and he circles your car?
No, ma'am. I lost contact of him as I was trying to get through because you have to.
So does he continue past you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he continues past you and you lose sight of him over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just draw an arrow where he continues to pass you.
He continues to pass me through here, and then he goes down here. You want me
And
to-
then he goes somewhere here where you can't see him.
Correct.
So just go over where you think he might have been to where you lose sight of him.
He started going here and then behind these houses.
Okay. And you can see that from here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when he gets behind the houses, you lose sight.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said at some point he comes back and searches your car? Has he already done that?
He looked into my vehicle,
Okay.
but he didn't circle it at that point.
Okay, when does he come, you're still in the car talking to 911, right?
I'm trying to get through.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point you said he comes back?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you said him back here and then he returns?
I know. I drive my car up here.
Okay, so move your vehicle up to there.
Yes, ma'am. Right here.
Okay, put car. And just drawing out from where you were to where you ended up.
There
Okay.
to there. And that's where I parked.
Okay, that's where you parked. Okay. You park here, and then, is that when he comes and circles your car?
Yes, ma'am. It might have been closer in between here, these houses.
Okay, well, you can move it.
Oh.
Just move it.
Right around there.
Right around here, okay. We're gonna access to it because it's not where you meant. You meant that you came around here and ended up here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you ended up here, and then, is that when he circles your car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. He comes out from where?
I don't know.
Okay, all of a sudden you just notice he's circling your car.
Yes, ma'am.
So he's circling your car.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you still on the phone?
Yes,
With
ma'am.
dispatch? Okay. Are you giving them a description?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where does he go where you said him again?
He walked back into the darkness here,
He went there? Okay.
and
Circled your
He
car?
walks back in here.
Yes, ma'am.
Does he make the turn? Or does he go?
I
You don't
didn't.
know, by the time he gets here, you can't see him.
Correct.
Okay. And you're still in your car?
Yes,
And you're watching him walk away?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then what happens?
The dispatcher asked me what direction he went on and exactly what address I was at.
And this is when you don't realize what street you're on, because you're on the center street and you live on the outside.
Correct.
Okay. So you're trying to figure out what street you're on. Okay, so you see him go here, and then so what do you do to try to,
I got out of my vehicle to look at this house's address and see if there was a sign there.
okay,
There wasn't.
okay,
So I walked through the dog walk to see if there was a sign here or an
Yeah.
address that I could make out easier.
okay, and then what happens?
The dispatcher asked me if I'm out of my car, and I said yes. And they said, "Do you know what direction he went in?" I said, "No." And they said, "Are you following him?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know where he went."
Okay, but you continue straight on the sidewalk,
Yes,
go to
ma'am.
this side,
Yes,
okay?
ma'am, all the way through.
And then what happens when you get there? You decide that you still don't know where you're at?
I still didn't know where I was at, but I was able to give the dispatcher a description from the clubhouse.
Mhm.
I said, "It comes straight in past the clubhouse, and my car is right here."
Okay. Is your car running or you've shut it
It's
off?
shut off.
Okay, so you just parked here, you follow him, it doesn't matter so much. So you walk here, and when you get here, you realize, okay, I'm just gonna go back to my car, is that what happens, or?
No, the dispatcher says, "Would you like a police officer to still come out?" Because I said, "I don't know where he went."
Okay,
He said, because he asked me for what direction they went in, and what road, and I said, "I don't know where he went." And they said, "Well, do you still want an officer to meet you?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, where do you want them to meet you?" And I said, "At my car."
okay,
So I started walking back towards my car.
okay. Is this all dark in here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, there's no lighting back here anywhere unless it comes from someone's house, is that how it works? Okay. And is it all dark down here, so you
Yes,
can't
ma'am.
see anything down
Unless
here?
there's patio lights on.
Okay, so at what point and where from what bushes does he jump out?
It was somewhere around here.
Did you know is there bushes along this walkway, or where are the bushes?
There are hedges around the sides and the back of the buildings.
Okay, so you think it's up here somewhere where the T is, where he jumps
Yes.
out? Okay, do you remember, you were walking this way, did he jump
was
in front of
done.
you from somewhere, or did he come up behind you, do you remember?
I don't recall.
Okay, but he was, from what you guess, he's somewhere hiding at this T with the bush,
Yes.
in the bushes when he jumps out. Okay. And then where do you end up when you guys are on the ground and after this all happened? Where? You know, do you
He
even know?
punched me in the face and I fell backwards and I don't even know
You
where
just know
I
you're somewhere in this area?
ended up. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when the police took you, they took you
Back up this way.
back at this way. Okay. And when that man was standing there with a flashlight, do you remember what building he was from?
No, ma'am.
Do you remember what building you saw when you said you saw somebody?
This one.
You saw somebody over here
Yes,
when you were hollering for help and the
Yes,
guy
ma'am.
says, I'm calling?
Yes,
Okay, this is the building where you see somebody. Okay. Okay, but he jumps out of bushes somewhere in this area.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Oh, what kind of gun?
My
Yours.
Keltec 9mm.
Okay.
You think I can have a
Oh, yeah, I'll get you now. Or you can have soda or coffee or anything.
water?
You don't need to use the restroom yet?
No.
Okay.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, I'm going to show you what's been introduced into evidence, I believe without objection, 176. Do you recognize State's Exhibit 176?
Yes, this is the Google map I brought Tim that he wrote on.
And is that the Google map that you were using in the last interview with the defendant?
Yes, this is the same map.
Okay. Your Honor, may the court assist us by dimming the lights a little bit? I apologize. Ma'am, I'm showing you State Exhibit 176. Do you see it there?
Yes,
Okay.
That's why we can't have
And is
nice
this the
things.
Google map you used in having the defendant describe his actions and where he came into contact with the person we now know as Trayvon Martin?
yes, that's the same map.
All right. And let's go over a few things if we can. I'm pointing to, appears to be a pink right here. What is the significance of that? Does it say car on there?
If it says car, that's where he says his car was when he first noticed Trayvon.
All right. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to blow up part of this Google map so that jurors can see it. Okay. So right here, I'm pointing to where it says the word car. That is pink. He's actually writing that in, or are you writing that in, or how does that progress?
He wrote that down, and I may have put the direction of the arrow.
Okay.
Showing the direction that he was going.
The defendant was driving? Okay. The next, what appears here is something in pink and an X. What is the significance of that?
That is supposed to indicate where Trayvon was when he first saw him.
Okay. So the defendant is telling you he is driving this way, and he comes into contact and sees Trayvon Martin, the victim, right here where the X is?
Yes, that's where he says he sees him first.
Okay, all right. In terms of using this map, I see what appears to be a line going this way. Tell me the significance of that.
Can a line that leaves the car shows the route of the car, and the line that leaves the X shows the route of where he says Trayvon passed him and then went behind the first set of houses there.
Okay.
The houses to the right of the clubhouse, you see three. They're at the top of the T.
Right here?
Yes.
Further down here? Okay. Let's go back, if we could, to right here. Is this what you understood to be the clubhouse area that I'm circling right here?
Yes,
Okay. There appears to be here an X and some lines right here. Do you see that?
yes, I believe it should say 911. That's where his car went, and he said he called 911 there.
May I approach the witness again? I'm going to give you the actual exhibit, and we have that up there, but just to make sure. So that is actually 911. Just remember to have that. So tell us again the significance of this right here that I'm circling, this part of this exhibit.
Okay, you'll see from the first place he says the car is, there's a line that shows him going there. And then instead of putting car at that location, because he said he remained in his car, we used 911 to show that's where he was when he was in his car and he called 911.
Okay. Now, on this exhibit, are there two lines, one going this way and the other one going the same way, but there are two lines going parallel at that point?
Yes, the X indicates Trayvon Martin, the first X, or all the way to the left.
All the way over here?
And then it's supposed to be a line showing the X stops at the car at some point where he says he looked into the car.
He being Trayvon Martin looked into the defendant's car?
That's what George Zimmerman is explaining happens. Yes.
Okay, okay, go ahead.
And then when I asked him, draw now a line where you say after Trayvon leaves you, where he ends up when he's out of your sight.
Okay.
And that's the arrow that goes straight and it ends up behind the houses right there.
Okay,
If you go up a little bit, that line, he ends up, it's right behind the house where he says that's where he loses sight of him. He follows the street around and goes
okay.
there.
And that's where the defendant claims that he lost sight of Trayvon Martin?
Yes,
Okay. Now, you also have something here, and I can't make out what that is, but it's pink and it's some kind of writing there. Tell me the significance of that, if you could.
you'll see how the car where it was 911 leaves, this mic's not acting right, leaves the clubhouse. I asked him to draw where he goes from there. He initially wrote that he stopped there, but then he scribbled that out to change where the car ends up a little bit more forward, where it
Okay.
says car,
Right here?
if that's where it says car.
So he originally
Yes.
had it here, and then it moves here. What happens over here?
Sorry, trying to get my.
The circle means
Make
that's
it
where he
better.
said Trayvon circled his car.
Neither one of them
So
will do
where
it.
that circle is in the X, that is where the defendant claims that Trayvon Martin came up and circled his car. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. Tell us what, in terms of the defendant is telling you using this Google map, what he claims occurred after that.
Trayvon leaves that area and goes straight up into the T,
Circled
the
his
top of
car.
the T. He doesn't
Am I
know.
pointing it out here this way,
That I
this
did
route?
not-
Yes.
Okay.
He says that at the top of the T at the intersect, he doesn't know if Trayvon continued straight or if he went down.
Okay, I'm
Between
going
houses.
to point this cursor and tell you I'm going red. The defendant's claiming he didn't know
Let me-
if Trayvon Martin went this way or went down this way.
Yes, that was my understanding.
Okay, what else does the defendant then claim?
That he got out of the car to locate a house address so that he could better tell dispatch where he was. This is all on the tape though, so you can hear exactly what he
Right.
said.
Right, so the defendant is claiming he got out of the vehicle right here to try to get an address so he could tell dispatch where he was at?
Yes,
Okay, what happens then to the defendant? And the reason I'm asking is it appears to be lines going this way, if you could tell us the significance of that.
It's probably just a second line. He says that he goes all the way across the T to the other side.
Okay, stop me if I'm going too far. Does he claim he's going like this,
Yes.
all
Yes.
the way to this street?
Yes.
Okay. What does the defendant claim he occurs when he gets over to the street that circles the whole retreat at Twin Lakes?
I believe that's where he says he lost him. He's telling dispatch he no longer knows where he is.
Okay.
He says that when he was there is when he no longer knew for sure which direction Trayvon had gone and thought maybe he was hiding.
Meaning he didn't know whether Trayvon Martin went this way or whether he went this way right here, one of those two?
Yes.
Okay. What does the defendant then claim at this point?
He discusses with dispatch whether or not the police should still come to the scene, and it's agreed that they will.
Okay. What else does the defendant claim as to what occurred?
He begins to walk back to the vehicle, which would mean he has to go past the intersect of the T again to go
Okay.
back to where he
Am I
parked.
going the right way?
Yes.
Okay. Stop me whenever he says something else.
I can't see.
He says it happens
Which
at the
way you're
intersect of
going.
the T, a little bit past it.
Right here?
Yes.
Okay. What does the defendant claim happens there?
Where?
Then Trayvon approaches him. He's not sure exactly where he came from.
Okay. In the interview that you conducted of Mr. Zimmerman, defendant, he said something came out of the bushes or something. Were you trying to, using this Google map, determine or have him point out where it was that he claims the victim came out of?
Right, because in some of the areas you can see bushes, but I couldn't particularly see them in that area, so I was trying to figure out what he was attempting to say.
Okay. What happens then?
He says that's when Trayvon approaches him and said what he said on the tape
All right.
about.
All right. You have, it appears an X is drawn right here.
That is the location that he said that when he was calling for help and saw somebody at a residence, he indicated that was the area that he had seen the person from a residence that would be located in that area.
Okay. Ma'am, you've conducted an interview, a recorded interview, then you conducted a second interview using the Google map. At this point, then, do you take additional steps regarding your interview of the defendant? Specifically, do you give him paper for him to write out a written statement?
Oh, yes. I had him fill out a statement form. I
Thank you,
just
Honor.
explained to him as best he could to explain everything he had told me in the interview, to be very detailed as to what he told me and try to put that in writing.
Now, in terms of the written statement, did you actually sit with him and go, okay, this is not right, change this or all that? Or how did that occur? Did you leave him alone, or were you in there with him telling him, you got to write this, you got to write this, or how did that proceed?
No, when I gave him the paperwork to write the statement, I left the room, and when I came back, he was done, and I had him sign them. I didn't read them. And I turned them over to investigators for him.
All right. And when you say you actually gave him paper, I mean, approach a witness, Your Honor? She's going to show State Exhibit 175. This brief's been shown to counsel, and I believe there's no objection.
Yes, sir.
Let me show you State Exhibit 175. Do you recognize State Exhibit 175?
I do. This is the statement that George Zimmerman wrote that night.
Okay.
My witness.
And I believe, is that 4 actual pages?
I believe it was 4, but I'll check. Yes, it's 4.
And when you say 4 actual pages, what do you mean by that in terms of, and yet you actually witnessed, what do you, every page you kind of write?
Right, I don't mean that I witnessed him filling these out. I witnessed that he signed, and that is his signature on each page. And
She didn't
I
watch
swear to
him
it that
write the whole thing.
you affirm that everything you wrote in the statement is true, and they say yes, and they sign each one, and that's what I'm witnessing.
So he actually signed each page?
Yes. And I did as well.
I'm sorry, you did as a witness too?
Yes.
All right, ma'am, and let me do this. I apologize, ma'am. Approach the witness again. Let me leave you the exhibit itself, 175. I gather the pages are numbered in some way, some fashion, at the bottom?
Yes. 10 at the bottom says 1 of 4, so the second should say 2 of 4, 3 of 4, 4 of 4.
Okay.
This goes along.
Now, what I'm going to do is blow this up so the jury can see it and get it, just the first part first. Are you getting just, what is up there in the very top?
That's already preset print on the page, and then he just fills up the information it's asking for.
Okay. And that would indicate what? His name?
Name, address, date of birth, social security number, phone number, city, DL number, driver's license number.
Take that down.
How can I clear it?
Yes.
Ma'am, I'm going to go into the actual written part of the exhibit. First part here. This is his handwriting, the defendant's handwriting, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and if you could go ahead and read what he wrote.
In August of 2011, I can't read with the lights down.
Oh. Can you read it from over there?
Can't read with the lights down.
So it's an eyesight test.
It's not good. And although I do wear contacts, they're not very helpful sometimes.
Okay. I think jurors can see that hopefully. Okay, go ahead.
All right, in August of 2011, I don't know what it says there, my something house.
Neighbors?
Okay, my neighbor's house was broken into while she was home with her infant son. The intruders attempted to
Attack?
attack her and did. However, SPD
child.
reported to the scene of the crime, and the robbers fled. My wife saw the intruders running from the home and became scared
Well, that was just rude. She
of
can't
the
read
rising crime
either.
within our neighborhood. And I and my neighbors formed a neighborhood watch program. We were instructed by SPD to call the non-emergency line if we saw something suspicious, and 911 if we saw a crime in progress.
Okay, let me interrupt you a second. And then just go to the second. Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Tonight, I was on my way to the grocery store when I saw a male approximately 5'11" to 6'2", casually walking in the rain, looking into homes. I pulled my vehicle over and called the SPD non-emergency phone number. I told the dispatcher what I witnessed, and the dispatch took note of my location and the suspect, I think it says possibly fled.
Okay, and now the word suspect, that's his word. Were you telling him to put certain words to describe the person we now know as Trayvon Martin?
No, I didn't tell him any words to use. I told him to tell me to put in writing what he had already explained to me and to be as detailed as he could.
Okay, let me stop you a second. A place for him to sign and a place for you to sign as a witness, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think we're going to go to page 2, but give me a second to catch up to you. Okay. Page 2, the top part reads the same as just got his name, and then I'm going to highlight the first part. If you could, go ahead and read. I apologize.
You want me to begin?
I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
please.
In a darkened area of the sidewalk, as this dispatcher was asking me for exact location, the suspect emerged from darkness and circled my vehicle. I could not hear if he said anything. The suspect once again disappeared behind,
Could that be between?
possibly,
Okay.
between some of the houses. The dispatcher once again asked me for my exact location, and I could not
Does she
remember
need her
the name of
glasses? What the fuck is wrong with you?
the name of the street. So I got out of my car to look for the street sign. The dispatcher asked for a description and the direction the suspect went.
Sorry.
I
May I
told the
interrupt you a second?
dispatcher.
Hold on one second. Sorry, just getting.
So mean. It's not
Okay, go
nice.
ahead. I apologize.
I told the dispatcher I did not know,
Please,
but I was out of my vehicle looking for a street sign and direction the suspect went. The dispatcher told me not to follow the suspect and that an officer was en route. And I headed back to my vehicle. When I headed back to my vehicle, I'm sorry, it's as I headed back to my vehicle. The suspect emerged from the darkness and said, "You got a problem?" I said, "No." The suspect said, "You do now." I can't
It's
figure out
something-
that last word is that
Okay,
you wrote.
all right.
You do now and
Okay,
looked, maybe?
okay. All right.
It maybe says and looked.
All right, we're going to move on to page 3, but let me just stop you before you read that, and we're going to highlight, go ahead, the first part. Again, he uses the word suspect to refer to Trayvon Martin. Have you uttered those words, or have you informed him anyway that's the word he's supposed to use to refer to Trayvon Martin?
No.
Thank you. Go ahead, page 3.
We finished off and looked and tried to, I guess he's trying to say I looked and tried to find my phone to dial 911. The suspect punched me in the face. I fell back toward,
Is it backwards?
I fell backwards onto my back. The suspect got on top of me. I yelled help several times. The suspect told me, shut the fuck up, as I tried to sit up. Right.
It's
The
not
suspect
George,
grabbed my head
George
and slammed it
Zimmerman's
into
writing
the
or
concrete
spelling
sidewalk
that she's
several
having a
times.
hard time with.
I continued to
her
call,
reading ability.
I continued to yell help. Each time I attempted to sit up, the suspect slammed my head into the sidewalk.
Hold on, sorry. Try to catch up.
Again,
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
you suspect.
My head felt like it was going to explode. I tried to slide out from under the suspect and continue to yell help. As I slid, the suspect covered my mouth and nose and stopped my breathing. At this point, I felt the suspect reach for my now exposed firearm and say, "You gonna die tonight, motherfucker." I understood my firearm.
Could that be unholstered? Or whatever you
Yes,
feel?
that would make more sense. Unholstered my firearm in fear of my life. I unholstered my firearm in fear for my life, as he had assumed.
That be assured?
You think it says what?
I can't expect it.
Okay.
Whatever. I believe the word is assured, A-S-S-U-R-E-D, but
As he, I don't know if it's assumed or assured, he was going to kill.
all right. But before you get to page 4, we got to pull it up.
Okay, now I've seen the whole sentence, maybe I can figure out what it says.
Okay.
My life as he assured he was going to kill me
Okay.
and fired one shot into his torso. The suspect sat back, allowing me to sit up, and said, "You got me." At this point, I slid out from underneath him and got on top of the suspect, holding his hands away from his body. And another,
An onlooker?
yes, an onlooker appeared and asked me if I was okay. I said no. He said I was calling 911. I said, "I don't need you to call 911, already called them. I need you to help me restrain this guy." At this point, SPD officer arrived and asked, "Who shot him?" I said I did, and I placed my hands on top of my head and told the officer
This is tragic.
where on my person my firearm was holstered. The officer handcuffed me and disarmed me. The officer then placed me in the back of his
Does she
vehicle.
need
You
glasses?
signed
She
that
says
last
she
page
wears
also,
contacts.
you had the prior
Yes.
4 pages,
All of
prior
them.
3 pages. Okay. Now, the defendant continuously
That's
refers to
insane.
Trayvon Martin. The person we now know is Trayvon Martin's a suspect, correct?
He did in the statement.
In that written statement, in the prior statements, he did not. The prior audio statements, he didn't refer to him as a suspect.
No, he did not refer to him as a suspect in anything but this.
Okay, all right. And when police officers are talking about a person they suspect of being a criminal, committing a crime, do they refer to them as a suspect?
Yes, we do. If we suspect them of a crime, they're a suspect.
All right, I don't know if now would be the time to take a recess or.
Time to recess for lunch. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess.
That was mother effing brutal, y'all. Like, sit there, watch this lady struggle to read. Good Lord. All right. Well, that's it. That's all I got. That's the end of the part 1 of the day 6. Whole lot of nothing the first part. We got finally into some statements from the George Zimmerman. Actually, not bad. He was pretty consistent with his storytelling. They're pointing out that he used the word suspect. I guess trying to say again with the whole he's trying to be a cop aspect of things. Okay, cool. That's fine. What have you. But still not really proven any such thing. Hold on. You can't see me. I can see me, but you can't see me. Anywho. Okay, so you could hear all of that, but you couldn't see me. Anyway, so that will be the end of this one, and then we'll get into it'll still be day 6, but it'll be the continuation. So I'm not sure if I will make it all of one, and it'll just be a part 2 of day 6. We shall see. But it'll be me partway cooking dinner. I gotta go cook dinner, so maybe. Or I'll just go do that real quick and then come on back up. We shall see. All right. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, do all of those things, and come back for the next one. Okay. Don't mind the hand. Okay. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.